Hello everyone and welcome back for another Star Trek, the official Starships collection review. Actually this time it's more like the Space Station edition. In front of me, as you can see, there is the Deep Space Station K-7 seen on Star Trek the original series. And before you can see this huge box, and of course I have a magazine stashed underneath. And so I will get this thing out of the way, this huge box, and we can look at the goodness that is inside the magazine first, shall we? Alright, so there it is, the magazine first. Space Station K-7, the special issue, I must point out. This was a space station scene on Star Trek the original series in the infamous episode called The Trouble with Tribbles from Season 2. And also, the station appeared again in Deep Space Nine and a sort of follow-up to the original series episode, Trouble with Tribbles. But this time, it was called Trials and Tribulations. In that episode, the Deep Space Nine crew gets sent back in time and, through various means, kind of interact with Kirk and his crew on board the Enterprise and the Space Station K-7. Anyway, so looking at the magazine, you have a very cool image of the station on the cover and some basic information here as well. It is a Federation station, operational in 2267 near the Klingon border, and the manager, of course, was Mr. Lurie. Turn the page, and despite this being a special, the stand mounting guide is the same as all other magazines, that is. And then you have some more specification information, some of which I've already mentioned. It was first seen in the Trouble with Tribbles, and it's located in the K sector, at least that's where it was. And of course operated by Mr. Lurie, the manager, and its facilities, it was used for shore leave storage and industrial replication. And so there it is, another shot of the station there, and with a little bit of text about it, which basically for the most part just mentions everything that was seen in the Trouble with Tribbles involving the station, and this screenshot or screen cap of the prelude to the infamous bar fight. And so yeah, and turning the page, here is the plan view showing you where various components are, except unlike other magazines, there are no kind of like lines or anything saying what's what. It's just, I guess, a very plain station. So there doesn't appear to be anything that says thrusters or sensors or transporter emitters or phasers or anything like that. It's just different views of the station, and that's it. And you get a little bit more close-up detail shots there, but unlike other magazines, you don't have any sort of trivia on the right-hand side, which is a bit of a bummer. I'm kind of disappointed that there's no plan views, there's no kind of detail saying what's what. But then again, this is in the early days of Star Trek where they probably didn't think all those things through. They just wanted a model and a background. So yeah, turning the page, we get more into the magazine filler, which is this section talks about the father of the Tribbles, David Gerald, and of course his work on Star Trek, and especially the Trouble with Tribbles. So this whole article goes on about that. And then finally we have a section on the making of the Trouble with Tribbles and that whole process. And this is all about the original series episode, not the Deep Space Nine one. And turn the page, there's more on that. And then finally we have more, And now finally we have the section on the Trouble, the Trials and Tribulations episode from Deep Space Nine. And as you can see, there's Sisko and crew on the station with Tribbles all around. And of course, down here you see Kirk and Uhura looking at Captain Sisko there. And oddly enough, fans will recognize this scene as actually being from Mirror Mirror. And instead of Sisko, it would be Melina Moreau, but obviously she was substituted, edited out, and Avery Brooks as Sisko was put in place instead. So that was definitely an awesome moment. Probably one of the few times in Star Trek that ship crews or ship cast and crews actually met together. That is with the exception of Picard and Kirk from Star Trek Generations, and Picard and Janeway from Star Trek Nemesis. Turning the page, you have more on that, including the at that time, newly rebuilt K-7 and the Enterprise and the Klingon D-7 battlecruiser. So this talks a little bit more about that episode, and we finally end the magazine with a shot of Quark sitting with Tribbles on this table, and in the scene itself, there was one on his head. And that pretty much wraps up the magazine. And there's an image of the station at the top, or the top view of the station on the back of the magazine. So, all in all, it's a fair magazine. A little disappointing in some areas, but I suppose there's really not much you can really say about it. So, fair enough, I guess. And now, let me get on to the station itself, or the model itself. So let's jump right onto it. Well, as I said earlier, this box is huge. A little bit different than the other special boxes. This is more of a square shape, whereas the other ones are more rectangular. And like all boxes, this looks the same as the rest. Had the various Star Trek logos and CBS and all that stuff, and the image of the model on the top. So let's get this open. Looks pretty cool, I'd say. All right. And the impression is it's pretty cool. Has a little bit more weight than I thought. The detail is kind of nice on the top there. As you can see, it says United Federation of Planets. Nothing appears to be misspelt. You have K-7 right here on the sort of the dome area. Not on the other side, but I think there's only one on one side in the episode. The antenna array, or whatever this is appears to be straight. It's not bent or broken, which is a wonderful thing. And also K7 appears on some of the other, or KC appears on some of the other parts of the station. And KA, I guess, basically different wings or different sections have different names or initials. The primary weight is in the base here, which is mostly metal, and the majority of the station, the top portion, that is the station itself, is all plastic. Looks like you have a sort of docking bay here, where various ships and shuttlecraft can go in there, notwithstanding large starships, of course. And overall, it's a very wonderful model. To be quite honest, I was not expecting it or looking forward to it. K-7 was definitely not my favorite space station in Star Trek lore. That honor probably goes to either Regular One or the orbital station from Star Trek The Motion Picture, but I'm also a big fan of the Earth Space Dock. And considering how good this model is, it makes me wonder that, as a preference, I wouldn't have minded having all the various space stations as specials instead of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie ships. You know, I guess those are cool and have their moments, and I'm glad I have them. But if I had a preference or a choice, I would have chosen to have all of the space stations instead. And if this were to be part of a space station collection, this would actually be the second, because very early on in the collection, about 4 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long, but about 4 years ago, of course, we got Deep Space Nine, and this would be the second. I would like to see in the future Regular One, or if you flip it upside down, it would be the orbital office from the motion picture, which itself, the station, was reused in many episodes of the shows, especially Next Gen and Deep Space Nine, and in the latter used a Starbase 375, I think it is. So anyway, K-7, the model is pretty cool and solid, spot on. You have some sort of panel detail down there, and as well as the bottoms, but for the most part, it's just pretty plain. And looking at it this way, I can't help but notice, because I'm a Back to the Future fan, that this looks a lot like the flux capacitor. There's your Y, and there's little points in there, so it's kind of cool, I guess. Overall, it's a good model. I'm happy with it. Plastic, metal, and of course it comes with a stand and a base to put it on. So in a second, I'll show you how that works. If you're a fan of the original series, I would definitely pick this up. As I mentioned earlier, this was one that showed up unexpectedly. That is, I didn't order it specifically. I mean, I know it's been out and around on the web shop for a while, but I was not in a hurry to get it, and then I got a shipping notice saying that it was coming. So yeah. Now let's see what it looks like on the stand. And there is the station, the model of the station on the stand there. Pretty easy way to do it. Goes and locks in place like this, and then the base of the model, where all the weight is, just kind of slides in there just like that. And there you have it. Again, as I mentioned, if you're a fan of the original series, definitely go out and pick this up. This is definitely for you. If you love space stations, definitely pick this up. As I said earlier, this is probably the first real space station that we've gotten outside of Deep Space Nine. So I guess I would say pick it up on that basis. As far as a model quality, it's definitely well done. A bit plain in some ways, but then again, keep in mind this was the original series, and a lot of the ships and models from that show were pretty basic and pretty plain, and they weren't really enhanced until the remastered versions of the episodes, 30, 40 years later. So it's definitely a good model, worth picking up. It'll run you about $47, give or take. Is it worth $47? I don't really think so. Again, it was just not one that I was rushing out to go get, but still cool, and I'm still glad to have it, especially being a completist. So there you have it, and thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below, and if you could please hit subscribe right here on the right, I would be most grateful. So yeah, until next time, live long and prosper, and be careful with those triples.
Thank you.